For a long time, we've thought about AI as a tool for business, right? Something that crunches data or automates tasks, kind of hidden away in the server room. But what if I told you AI is moving out of the server room and into the boardroom? It's taking a seat at the actual decision-making table. So yeah, let's dive into this, because this isn't science fiction anymore. This is the new corporate reality.
And, this isn't some brand new thing. It's been quietly happening for a decade. Way back in 2014, a venture fund in Hong Kong put an algorithm named Vital on its board to help pick investments. Just 2 years after that, a company on the Nasdaq Nordic Exchange hired an AI called Alicia T as a top manager. And then just last year, a Polish company went all in and named Mika, a humanoid robot, its CEO. These aren't just PR stunts. This is a real accelerating trend.
So that all leads to the big question, right? How does this actually work? I mean, it's one thing to have a robot CEO for a cool press release, but how does an AI really, truly manage the incredibly complex, high-stakes world of a big corporation? Well, it turns out there isn't just one single answer to that. Right now, companies are basically hitting down two very different roads to build an AI-powered corporation, and each road is based on a totally different idea about what a machine's role should be. And believe me, these two paths could not be more different. The first path is like building one single, all-seeing intelligence, a digital command center that has total oversight of everything. The other path is more like building a team. You assemble a bunch of specialized AIs, one is an expert in hiring, another in compliance, another in strategy, and you fuse them together into a kind of digital board of directors.
Let's really dig into that first approach, the digital command center. Because this isn't just a theory, it already exists, and on a scale that is just mind-boggling. The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, or ADNOC, has built a system they called the Panorama Digital Command Center.
And when I say the scale is mind-boggling, I really mean it. Panorama is being fed real-time data from 10 million sensors spread across the entire company. That is 10 million individual data points, giving it a live second-by-second picture of a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise. It is the ultimate single source of truth.
So what does it do with all this data? Well, Panorama pulls in information from every single subsidiary. It uses digital twins to create virtual models of its real-world operations, and it secures all of it with blockchain. But the result isn't just watching things, it's generating AI-driven recommendations. This is a direct tech solution to a classic business headache called agency costs. That's the risk that managers might act in their own self-interest instead of the company's. With this kind of total transparency, there's just nowhere to hide.
Okay, so if these systems are so powerful and solve so many problems, why doesn't every single company have one? Well, this is where we run headfirst into a massive legal and ethical wall. It's called the black box problem. See, the most powerful AIs, the kind you'd need to run a system like Panorama, are often black boxes. We can see the data that goes in, and we can see the decision that comes out, but we can't really understand the incredibly complex reasoning that happens in between. And that's a huge problem. I mean, how can you hold an AI accountable if you don't even know why it did what it did? How do you check for hidden biases you can't see?
And this isn't a new concern. Regulators have been thinking about this for a long, long time. The European Union is tackling this right now with something called the right to explanation. But the idea goes back even further. Think about it. Back in the 1970s, the US passed laws saying that if you were denied credit, you had a right to know why. And that one simple rule is a big reason why a lot of financial algorithms today are still kept relatively simple and explainable. The law needs to know why.
So, how do we get around this giant problem? There's a really fascinating solution being proposed. The idea is, instead of trying to force a super complex AI to explain itself in human terms, which might just be impossible, what if we create a separate, machine-readable world for it to live in, with rules it can perfectly understand and follow, no questions asked?
The idea is to create a dedicated operational context. It's a three-step process. First, you define exactly what the AI is supposed to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Then, you write two sets of corporate policies, a qualitative, principle-based one for your human employees, and a super strict, quantitative, rule-based one for the AI. Finally, the AI is basically firewalled to operate only within those machine-readable rules. It's like creating a perfectly auditable sandbox for it to play in.
Here's what that looks like in the real world. For humans, the policy is a guiding principle, something like ensure fair treatment of all shareholders. It's based on judgment. But for the AI, that same principle gets translated into cold, hard logic. execute actions based on specific, non-discriminatory risk metrics, and only use data with informed consent. It's the same goal, just expressed in two totally different languages. One for human judgment, the other for pure machine execution.
So, let's imagine we actually do it. We solve the black box problem with this method. What does the future look like then? Well, this is where we get into a concept that is truly mind-bending: the corporate singularity.
You've probably heard of the technological singularity, this idea of an intelligence explosion, where each new AI creates an even smarter successor. Well, in business, that can mean a company with a really efficient AI management system starts to outperform all its rivals. That success gives it more money to invest in an even better AI. You see where this is going? It creates a feedback loop that could lead to an unstoppable, irreversible gap in corporate evolution.
And what's really fascinating is that this could evolve in two very different directions, basically mirroring how humans run things now. Our tradition of collegiate management, a board of directors, that points to a future of distributed intelligence systems, like Panorama or that fused AI board. But our other tradition, individual management, the powerful single CEO, that points to a future of androids, like Mika, as single embodied leaders.
Now, before we get completely lost in the future, it's really important to remember that these ethical questions are already here. When the robot Sophia was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, it sparked a global outcry, which was perfectly captured by this powerful question. We're already trying to figure out the complex social and ethical status of these things, long before they're actually running our biggest companies.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most important question. We spend all this time focused on whether an AI can do the job. But let's say we solve all the technical and legal problems. We create an AI that is demonstrably more efficient, more profitable, and maybe even more ethical than any human leader could be. Should we hand over the reins? What would that actually mean for us?